I'm J.R. Church. Welcome to today's analysis of the news. I've got a little article here that I read on the internet that really points up the importance of Israel's heartland. God promised this area to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This article says the land of Israel is the biblical, historic, and exclusive homeland of the Jewish people. It is Israel's country. It has never been the national homeland of any other people. At the heart of the land of Israel lies the mountains of Israel, known since ancient days as Samaria and Judea. Today, all who reject Jewish ownership of and sovereignty over these lands call them the West Bank. But this term West Bank has only been used for the past 19 years. That's all. And yet, it's being hammered out to the people across the world that this area is the West Bank, or sometimes called the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Well, in all the history of the land, it's only been known as this for about 19 years, but the name seemingly has stuck. This land constitutes the bulk of what the world wants to give the Arabs for the creation of a Palestinian state. And there are a number of things that I want to bring to your attention about this. The Israeli-occupied West Bank is the very cradle of Jewish civilization. First of all, in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, Israel's founding fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, lie buried. Yes, they're buried in this West Bank. Their wives lie with them, as in the case of Jacob's wife, Rachel. In Bethlehem, it's also the Israeli-occupied Arab West Bank. Bethlehem, can you imagine? The place where Jesus was born is the West Bank. Rachel's Joseph is also buried in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. He's buried in Shechem. It was on the Israeli-occupied West Bank that Abraham stood when God told him to look to the north, look to the south, look to the east, and look to the west, promising that all this land he could see would be given to his descendants forever. And yet today, for the last 19 years, it's been called the Israeli-occupied West Bank. And in fact, the world wants to give it to the Palestinian peoples for their homeland. And yet, God said to Abraham, I'll give it to you and your descendants forever. And then Jacob was traveling through this Israeli-occupied West Bank when he laid down to sleep one night and dreamed of a staircase reaching into heaven, with angels ascending and descending as God spoke from on high, saying, Jacob, the land on which you are lying is the land I'm giving you and your descendants after you for an everlasting possession. That place is called Bethel, the house of God. And yet, today, for 19 years now, it's been known as the Israeli-occupied Arab West Bank. Joshua, Moses' successor, and that great leader of Israeli conqueror, that great Israeli conqueror is buried in the mountains of Ephraim. Yeah, and what has been known for the last 19 years as the Israeli-occupied Arab West Bank. For close on 400 years, the nation of Israel worshiped God at the tabernacle at Shiloh. And Shiloh is located, yeah, you guessed it, in the Israeli-occupied Arab West Bank. Then there was Gideon. Gideon was threshing wheat in Ophrah in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. In the Israeli-occupied Arab West Bank, I might say, when the angel of the Lord called on him to become a judge for the Israelites. And other judges, including Deborah, also lived in this Israeli-occupied Arab West Bank. It was there that Ruth met Boaz, remember, in Bethlehem, who wooed her and married her in what is called, for the last 19 years, the Israeli-occupied West Bank. And their grandson, the shepherd king David, was born in Bethlehem in the, you guessed it, Israeli-occupied Arab West Bank. Ancient Jerusalem, which David then established as the capital of his kingdom, is in the heart of this Israeli-occupied Arab West Bank. The heart of Jerusalem is the Temple Mount, site of Solomon's splendid first temple, and the exiles rebuilt the second temple. It is in the Israeli-occupied Arab West Bank. Is it clear yet? Can it possibly be any more so? Indeed, it is clear. Those who do not see it simply don't want to see it. I'm going to tell you something. Dear Christians and Jews, the roots of the nation of Israel are planted deeply and irremovably in the Israeli-occupied Arab West Bank. Judea and Samaria represents the cradle of Jewish nationhood. Folks, when God says He's going to give it to the Jews, watch out when you try to give it to the Palestinians. You'll be falling under the judgment of God. Hear me, America, the judgment of God. When you kick out the Jews from their historic promised land and put the Palestinians in there, and for the first time in the history of civilization, make that land the homeland of somebody else. Whoa, watch out. Want to remind you also that we have our weekly television program, which you can see on this website. Our first interview with L.A. Marzulli, and we're offering 4 of his books. 3 of them are novels on the Nephilim, the giants of old, the fallen angels' offspring. And then Marzulli has this book as well called Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, the Coming Great Deception, and the Luciferian Endgame. And it's a fascinating book that tells about the supernatural, these fallen angels, and how they're going to be showing up during the 7-year tribulation period to introduce the Antichrist as the Messiah. It's really a fascinating book. I think you will love it. You can get all 4 of these books. You can get them for $14.95 each, or all 4 of them for a gift of $50. Just look to the website here. You'll see right here on the front page of our website a little ad. You can click on it and go to the page and read all about it. I hope you will. And be sure and watch our interview with Marzulli. This is J.R. Church. We'll see you again tomorrow with our analysis of the news.